inch by inch. That's how we're finishing up over here. Just finishing up this handrail system on this big party deck from last year. I'm trying to make it in time for Memorial Day weekend. We'll see what happens. It's been real easy going all the way along. Essentially, we had these 2x4s that we milled with a trench at the bottom. Now you're potentially or ostensibly just finished watching a video from last year, but forgive me if I have to catch myself up. There's holes in these and holes at the ends to drain water. We didn't bother doing that on the top, but they were made to the same length as the bottom. And so all I've had to do is work my way around. I went from here and went all the way over to there and down the stairs. I went right on by the middle here, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Still working on that frog in my throat, but I've had to pull the posts in using a ratchet strap as a come along, which isn't a great idea. You don't want to put a ton of obviously by the size, this is a pretty heavy duty one, so I can give this put more torque on it, more pressure. But it's when you come to let them go and things can let go. I actually have a friend that got a hook in the eye, hook in the face. Anyway, if you're going to have to back one off that you've put too much pressure on, you want to tighten another one up practically as tight and then loosen the first one and back yourself out rather than letting it explosively let go if you're doing this. But it's a fine woodworking tool as far as I'm concerned. It's a giant band clamp. But I've been sending these to the top flush. All of these posts were cut at the same height, 39 inches from the deck all the way around. And then we milled this lumber. I'm sending it to the flush to the top, centered on this notch. I just put a center mark with pencil and just eyeballed it into the notch. Some of them needed to be twisted with a clamp one way or another. And then we're using T25 drive, which I try to stick to unless I'm going with a finished screw. Number 10 by 4-inch long screws to come from that rail and go down into the meat of this 6x6, which I think is one of the best looking. It's ideally we're going to cover this whole thing with railing cap, and you won't see it, so it's not going to be the best looking, but it's going to be a really rigid and meaningful connection into that post. Now the bottoms we did with trim screws, I think, yeah, from the edges in like that. These fuzzies and stuff have to get sanded and finished off here, but those went in like that because I couldn't get from below, and I couldn't come down from above without making, this type of a. Not only is it ugly, but water will pool there and stuff on the bottom. So we did that one way on the bottom, more aggressively on top. We're going to come through with 2x8 that was hand-picked last year to be relatively clear and good looking, and we're going to cap everything and miter the corners. Now over here we had an issue because this post, out of all of them, now this is the load-bearing post that goes down into the ground. The other one is just for looks at every one of these corners. The one goes into the ground, the other one's just for looks. This is load bearing, and we had a ton of settling out here to the tune of about an inch. And when you walked out there and looked across, my customer said, "Hey, I was looking, this was last year, it looks like we settled a bunch on that front corner," which was unfortunately true. He was over here and had, this perspective. I can't remember if we covered this in the video. But we fixed that by letting go of that post everywhere here and just letting everything come up till the deck was level again and reattaching. Unfortunately, we had trimmed that post to the original 39 inches before the settling. So when we left it down and pulled everything else up, you can see it on the left there, it's shorter than everybody else by about an inch. So what are we going to do? There's no stretching or adding to this post, really, but that's what we're going to have to do. Wood isn't an additive material. Essentially, we'll come back and look at this. I'm going to do like a Z miter, or it's going to be 3 facets at 90 degrees to one another, but at 45 degrees from the side of the post for a short bit, and then at 90 through the majority of it, and then at 90 again to that, and 45 to the outside out, and it makes like a bird's mouth. Rather than cutting it on this face, we'll cut it on the side faces, and so it'll just be the leading edge of that miter that comes down to land with the piece that we add. That'll be a little bit longer, and it'll just. So I'll come in here and I've got to slide these up. I'm going to plot out the Z on the side of this, which I'll plot and cut on this first because this is the one that we have to match. Then I'll go spend the time to try and make a component that'll come in and land, and the grain pattern will kind of, run together and won't call a lot of attention to itself, and see if I can't make something to fit to it, rather than going to make the piece first and then hoping to make a cut that it, again, mathematically it's going to be one thing, but what actually happens with the workpiece is going to be something else. So since we're at the top surface level of finish here, we're going to work two other things and do things like scribe and stuff like that, rather than measure and force things with math. This is the last step that we're measuring and forcing with math. This is the same length as the bottom, and so long as the posts were set plumb and we can pull it in tight and screw it there, it will help to force everything into a visual perfection, which is what we're looking for. Then the very final touches will dial in by being a little more organic and playing a little more jazz with our workflow, to quote one of my old bosses. Okay, cut these railings at the complementary angle here, and I'm trying to keep this stringer or cap to the railing system to be at the same elevation, and this cap is going to go up and turn as well, as far as I know, and everything here is going to be, for as complicated as it is, busy in some ways, some of the main features will be very smooth and modern and not draw a lot of attention to themselves. So quite a few verticals, but one relatively simple smooth top, like cocktail cap, cocktail ledge. So that's sort of a nice way to do that. And then I think we might put a little edge on something, a little profile, a little bevel, to have them pick something out. We have the opportunity to put it on top of the radius that's already on the deck boards on the outside edge if they wanted, and it would just be something that we put along the edges of the cap and the corners of the posts. So we'll have to look at that. But we got some more lumber to get through out here. That's mostly handrail. These are mostly drops. And then this is what I hope to take home and use as cribbing in my basement to help lift on a low part of the structure. Because I ran out of cribbing and I knew there was a pile here I wanted to get back to. So that's another series. But stay tuned.